Passion our purpose, profit our pain. I don't want my name to ever be in vain. A life full of substance is the only thing that will remain the same. Millennial Thoughts. Hey y'all, welcome back to Millennial Thoughts Podcast with your girl Alicia. Today we have a special guest here to talk to us about all things money. So we are so excited for that for our Financial Freedom Month. And I will introduce her. Her name is Tiffany Grant. She's an accredited financial counselor and award-winning personal finance blogger, podcaster, coach, and educator. She has been featured on Yahoo Finance, CNBC, Essence, and Acorns as an expert on side hustles, business, and money. Tiffany has helped many people become more in tune with their money by providing financial education in a down-to-earth and relatable format. So all of you all, welcome Tiffany to the podcast.
Hey, y'all.
What's up? We are so excited to have you on to talk a little bit about your money journey and how you help other people learn about investing and getting to, financial freedom, as we all are trying to get a dollar, whether we're trying to save it, spend it, or invest it, okay? So I wanted to start off with, how did you learn about money and what made you want to teach people about money?
Yeah, so I guess we can go back to, I think what started this all was when I was 16. And my mom was like, okay, so I had my first job. I was probably making about $7.25 an hour at CVS. And, working after I got out of school. So mind you, this is only like 4 hours a day. At 16, I had a car. And she was like, okay, Tiffany, well, now that you have a job, you can pay for this car that you have. And so just imagine a 16-year-old working part-time hours, making $7.25, and having to afford a car payment. So at that point, I was like, okay, I got to make my money stretch. And so that's when I started becoming very conscious about how I spent money and became kind of like a super saver. And also, an extreme couponer. But even going back further than that, I just remember, my family, everybody's extreme spenders. And so my mom, she had a credit card stack, probably about, I know y'all can't see me, but probably about 6 inches big when I was little, just full of credit cards. And every time we would go into a store, they'd be like, oh, would you like to apply for our credit? You get 20% off. They always did that whole spiel. And so she would always be like, sure. And then she would whisper to me, I'm not going to get it. And then they would be like, you're approved. And so she would just constantly collect cards. And, as a kid, it was good for me because I was able to get what I wanted, and that type of thing. But as a kid, I didn't realize the, negative aspects of all of that. And so it wasn't until the 2008, 2009 crisis when, the spending habits of my family started catching up with them. Literally everybody in my immediate family had went through a bankruptcy, foreclosure, what have you at that time. And so me going through that, because this was before I was 16, but me going through that and seeing what the negative sides of using credit and things did, that kind of started me also at, as far as paying attention. So I would watch Susie Orman every week. I used to love her show. Can I afford it? Okay. But I used to love watching her show and just learning more. I used to subscribe to Money Magazine, Keep With Your Personal Finance. I've always been a nerd, so I would read books, read blogs, listen to podcasts, that type of thing. So when I was 16 and she said that, I already kind of had an idea about money, just self-taught. But that's when it kind of kicked into high gear because I was like, ooh, now I got a whole responsibility. And I can't just use my money, how I want to use it. So, that's kind of what I would do. I would go to the store, have carts full of stuff, and especially being an employee of CVS because I got my discount, I got my extra bucks, I got coupons on top of that.
Okay, you was ready.
Yeah, so I would like strategize, and I would have carts full of stuff for like $20, $10, that type of thing. And so I feel like that's when a lot of this started.
You should have been on Extreme Couponer.
I could have back then. They probably would have been like, I probably would have been the youngest person.
The youngest Extreme Couponer ever. How much do you save? I only spend $20 and I go out. That'd be cool though, for real. They need to get you, okay? If y'all listen to this, y'all know somebody connected. I don't know if they do that show no more, but it used to be on TLC, right? They used to have all the crazy shows on TLC.
And well, now I don't coupon like that. So I mean, I coupon, but not like that.
Not crazy, yeah. I just remember them because I used to work at a grocery store, so I would be seeing all the people come. I'd be like, "Ooh, I don't want that one. I don't want that one." I'm like, "Well, and they got the coupons, baby, and don't let the coupon." Oh no, that's right. I'm like, "Okay, girl, it's not going through the system." But yeah, so
sorry, girl.
That's cool. But I always think it's important to learn about, or to think about, when you learn about money, and how we do talk about, like, sometimes in our community that we don't learn about money that much, or they don't teach us that. And so it's kind of figuring out like how we do learn about money, which my dad did teach me how to save, and how he learned about money because he didn't want to struggle and stuff like that. So that's cool. But everybody doesn't have that. And my dad would always be like, well, cash is king, not credit. But now as I'm growing older, it's like, well, you're supposed to use credit as an asset, not as like a need, But that goes back into like education. It's like we don't learn that in school. So that's something that you got to think about when you get older. But also I think when we grow up in our communities, like they don't talk about money. And that's kind of sad, because when I was around some other counterparts, like they'll talk about money, like to their kids and stuff like that. They'll talk about bonds and finances and savings and stuff like that. But it's like, we don't get that education, and we don't get that education in school. So it's like we're just learning off of what we know. And even if we take that next step to self-educate ourselves, as you were saying, like the podcasts or the books. I know I was listening to no podcasts, and I barely was reading books in high school. Although I did like to read, though, but I didn't know nothing about podcasts and like watching YouTube and stuff like that. So I feel like now this next generation, they do have an advantage because they have so much content to basically like inhale, which could be a good thing or a bad thing, as we can see on social media. But so after that, you like start doing your car payment, you do extreme couponing. What made you want to like go the route of like personal financing, like studying money and stuff like that to educate people?
So, from there, that kind of sparked it, and I continued that on because I was pregnant at 17. So I was a teen mom, had my son when I was 18. And so I, always had money on my mind as far as like, I need to make my dollar stretch. Like, that's just how I've always like, from that moment on, that's just how I've continued to live my life. So as I kept learning and I kept educating myself and stuff, people would come and ask me questions, like family, friends, like people that knew that I was, diving deep into this stuff. And I was like, you know what? If one person has this question, then there's probably hundreds of other people that have these same exact questions. And I'm like, and honestly, I got tired of answering the same questions over and over and over again. So I was like, you know what? If I can just put it out there on the World Wide Webs, and make a blog, then, that would be helpful. And then also at the time, because I started this when I was 26, I was also trying to be debt free by 30. Now, I was like, okay, I can use this as an educational tool, but I can also use this as like my motivation, something that I can be held accountable myself, because if I have an audience, then, if I don't make my goal, they'll be like, Tiffany, we've been bamboozled. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I used it as like an accountability thing too. And so I'm like, I can get a 2-for-1 with this. Let me just go ahead and start putting this stuff out there. And originally it wasn't supposed to be a business. It was just me writing because I love to write. And it kind of just snowballed into what it is today. But I'm just so grateful that I'm able to teach people about their money and about their finances, because it is a gap that needs to be filled. And there's, in the grand scheme of things, it's only a handful of us out here trying to do this massive work. And honestly, we need more people talking about money. And I feel like the more that we talk about it, the less taboo it is. Because the only reason money is a taboo, or mental health or what have you, especially in our communities, is because nobody talks about it. If people start talking about it more, they start opening up about it more, then it doesn't have to be a taboo. Then it's like, oh, a normal part of the conversation, like other ethnicities. So, that's just something to think about. I feel like mental health and money kind of falls into the same category.
That's interesting. I was thinking about the money thing because it's as simple as like, actually, my parents was really open. Like, they would tell us how much they would get back on their tax returns. Like, my dad be telling me how much he makes and stuff monthly. So I can see that in a sense, but also I can't see that perspective because my parents told me how much they made because he wanted to, to teach us about money. And so I think about that though, because even like with around my friends, like, I don't know if it's because it's ashamed or not, but it's like you wouldn't even tell your friends like how much you make a year, But it's like, well, everybody has different money things, so it's like I'll tell you how much I make a year. Like this is nothing. Like what is going on? But it's like even in conversation with friends, but like who you should talk to because you're like, okay, well, how much are you making? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I feel like it just depends on like definitely like what career you're going to. But I feel like even that like that's that be like, oh, you gonna tell your friends how much you make? Like okay, I guess it's none of their business, but it's like. That's what the other people are talking about. They're talking about money all day long. Investing, doing this, how they meet this person, how they meet that person. And we don't talk about it, but it's like we need it. Or we be the ones struggling trying to get it. How are we going to figure out how to get to the next level if we don't even talk about it in our own circles?
Absolutely. And see, that's the thing. And even because, my life is like an open book. Ever since I opened my blog, I started my blog, my life is an open book. Like I talk about everything. I feel like nothing's off limits. But you know how many people have told, like family members, they're like, you share too much. You don't need to post that. And I'm just like, no, I do need to post it because that's the problem. Like the problem
we don't know.
Yeah, the problem is we're not posting enough. We're not talking about this stuff enough. And the reason I talk about it is to build awareness. So that way somebody else can be like, oh, I went through that, or I'm going through that right now, or, oh, it's okay to talk about that, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And so, my response was just don't follow me. I need more friends. I need more room on my list anyway. Okay. But it's just like, we have to have these conversations. Like, I'm so glad you have me on. We have to have these conversations. We need to do more of it because that's the only way that we can help each other, as a community, we can lift each other and rise to the next level. Otherwise, if we keep acting like the crab in the barrel mentality where, oh, well, I'm not going to tell you about this because I don't want you to come up and no. We have to start talking about these things because that's the only way we're all going to strive and succeed.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the reason why I started Millennial Thoughts, to talk about everything that they don't teach you, okay? Because they don't teach you about personal finance. I don't even know if when you were talking about personal finance, I was like, I didn't even heard about personal finance until I graduated. I didn't think about that. I'm like, okay, I know I got to pay my rent, I got to pay this, but I didn't know about investing and doing all this and that stuff and like I didn't know how to save money. I knew how to make money, like working and stuff like that, but like working 2 jobs. Now I'm like, I used to do that, but I'm like, now I'm like, I shouldn't have to work 2 jobs. I have a master's degree. I have so many years of experience, but you got to work 2 jobs sometimes, but it's like, it's crazy that you got to work 2 jobs. And like, then they talk about house hacking and they talk about side hustles and stuff like that. So like, there's different ways to figure it out, but it's like, what do you know? And I wouldn't know nothing about side hustles until I started doing this, which is necessarily not a side hustle. I would say like it's a passion project. I like to talk, I like to educate, and it's like mixing it together, which one day it could turn into a side hustle in general. But it's just like we don't talk about like what's a side hustle. All we know is a 9 to 5. Our entrepreneurship. Absolutely. Like we don't know about even multiple streams of income that comes in later because our parents was only living on 1 stream of income or 2, like if you had a mom and a dad or more people in the household, it was more, but it was like only 1 stream was coming from 1 person. So yeah.
And see, that's the thing too, and that's kind of why I started the podcast portion, was to highlight other people's stories because like, yeah, it's all fine and dandy, I can blog about my story and what I'm going through, but not everybody's gonna resonate with that. And also just getting to know what other people around the country, around the world are doing to make, save, spend, invest, like all of those things surrounding money. It just like, there's so many episodes where I was just like, mind blown. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And so, I I have this belief that the way out of poverty is ideas. And so the more ideas that we can spread as a collective, the better off we all are. Like, there's no such thing as, oh, let me not do this because somebody else is doing this. No. Take, for instance, look at the bread aisle. Bread is bread. A loaf is a loaf. But you see how many different brands of bread there is. That's because, guess what? People that like one brand, they're going to go for that brand. People that like the other brand, they're going to go for that brand. But if you really look at the grand scheme of things, bread is the same flour, water, eggs, what have you. But, the bread companies don't see the competition. I mean, they see it, but they don't. It's like, okay, I'm going to put out my loaf because I know my loaf is better, or my loaf is good for this type of person, or my loaf is good for this. And so they don't worry about, oh, if somebody else has a loaf, I'm not going to go ahead and put out a loaf. No, put out your loaf because your people will find you. And so that's another thing, I do a lot of business talk too, but that's another thing. Like, if you have an idea, go ahead and act on it. Go ahead and act on it. It doesn't matter what anybody else is doing because nobody's you. And whatever your little flavor, your little spin, whatever it is that you have to put out there, that's going to be your differentiator. That's what's going to make you different. And so, anyway, let me get off my soapbox with that. Let's get back to it.
I'm like, it's a preference. If you like white bread, you like wheat bread, you like some Hawaiian rolls. Okay, it is what it is. Okay. It's like it's what you like. So, I mean, I do agree with that. So if someone was wanting to, start their financial freedom journey or their debt-free journey. So did you make your debt-free journey by 30? For the people in the back.
I did not. So I just turned 31 this year. So, at first I was like, ooh, well, like last year when I turned 30, I was like, okay, well, as long as I'm 30 in 11 months and 29 days, I still made it. But I did go ahead and turn 30 this year. I could not postpone that. So I was like, even though I didn't make it, first of all, I did pay off a lot of debt in the meantime, in between time. And I did, teach a lot of people along the way and all that stuff. So I was grateful for the journey and I wasn't too bummed out about it. But I was like, you know what? I can just make it debt-free by 35. So. Okay.
And to your advantage or disadvantage, I don't know. The last 2 years we have been in the pandemic.
This is true. I'm going to go ahead and take that as my excuse. But...
maybe everybody wasn't looking too right. just look at that. But I was saying that to say because I'm like, well, with your audience, like sometimes when you are trying to show and you're being that brave soul and stuff like that, like they'll look at like they're like, well, no, she was trying, like she's helping me. So it's like your audience really didn't think you was faking because you was trying, you was showing it, you was showing up. It just didn't happen.
And my audience, they ain't saying nothing about it. Yeah. Like that was all in my head. Like that was just the way to keep myself accountable. It's like, ooh, so much pressure, like people watching me. But really people are like, ooh, let me get this tip from Tiff and da 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 da. Like they wasn't really paying attention to that part too much. So nobody said anything when I turned 30 or 31. So it's just something that I was doing as a competition with myself. But like I said, I learned so much along the way and I did pay off so much debt along the way to the point where I'm looking at what I have left like, oh, that's nothing, yes. Just because I know how far I've come so far, it's just what we can do. So.
Yeah, well, being a millennial, in student loan debt, I don't know if you want to share, but I was going to say, like, do you know, I guess, like, what got you into debt? And for someone who's trying to get out there, like, do you have tips for them so how they can start their debt-free journey if that's where they're at in the process?
Yes. Okay, so first and foremost, my first debt, okay, let me back up. What really made me start paying attention was, okay, I told you the story about how my family was all about credit cards and all this stuff, and I was terrified of credit. So I didn't have my first credit card till I was like 20 something. And the only reason I got it was because you have to have credit to have credit. It's so crazy, but that's just how it works. And so I went to the bank and I was like, I'm going to just see if I can get like $200. That's all I want. I went in and I got denied. Long story short, I got denied for $200 limit. Now, she said I was denied because I wasn't making enough. That was one. And then for 2, I had a lot of medical, like negative medical collections on my credit report. Now, I was always told that medical did not count. People were like, oh, medical don't count. That's a lie. It does count because creditors do look at that. Mm-hmm. So what that did for me, though, was that sparked me to start paying attention to my credit stuff and also go for another job. Like, I was like, oh, so I don't make enough? Like, I'm thinking in my day to day, oh, I make, enough to survive, whatever. But to have somebody else tell me, no, sis, you don't make enough.
You don't make enough.
Right. I was like, so that just like woke me up, like out of what I was used to, got me kind of out my comfort zone. I was like, oh, I don't make enough. Let me see, how much am I supposed to be making?
Okay.
So, right. So, in a year's time, I had got a new job, got all the medical stuff off. And then I went back to the same bank. I ended up getting the same person, which was crazy. And, when I went in, I was like, you remember me? And she was like, no. But
I remember you, girl. Last time you told me no.
Right. But, at that time, I was very confident because my credit score was like 7 something. I was doing the thing. I got a new job. And so she asked me, she was like, well, how much are you looking for? And I was like, this time I was like 1,000. And I was like, I was just being modest. No. But she ended up saying that I was approved. And I told her, I said, I want to thank you because if it wasn't for you, I would still probably be working the job, not making anything. And then also having all this negative stuff on my credit report. And she was like, oh, you're welcome. Like looking confused, like, okay, girl. But it just it allowed me to make the changes. And that's what I tell people when you're starting on this journey. Awareness is key. Get all your numbers out. Look at that stuff. Like, it don't matter how nasty, dirty, you think it looks, look at it because that's what gives you awareness. And once you have awareness, then you can start making changes. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what you're trying to change, how are you going to change?
That's true.
So the awareness is kind of what jump-started that. And then also I tell people, if you're getting started with like budgeting or, having a little spending plan, whatever you want to call it. I know budgeting is a trigger word for some people. So whatever you want to call it. But when you're getting started, just track. Don't even worry about making a budget. Just track what you're spending your money on, because that also brings awareness too. And once you have that awareness, you'll start realizing where your little holes in your boat are coming from. And once you start knowing where they are, you can start plugging them up. So that's why I tell people just start with tracking. Just start looking at your bank statements, or every time you make a transaction, go ahead and write it down or whatever, put in Excel, whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. But that way you can know where your money's going. Mm-hmm. Usually that's where I start with my clients. And for instance, another millennial, she realized that she was spending $800 a month just in alcohol and going out with friends for entertainment. And
I'll get you. I'll do it.
And she had no idea until we started tracking. Then she was like, wait a minute. And I got $10,000 in credit card debt. No. And so I was like, yeah. So even if you become aware, you don't have to say, oh, well, I'm never going out again. No, all you have to do is cut it back a little bit and then use that little extra to put towards the credit card.
And so she got some disposable income. I need her job. Because $800 alcohol, you know how many trips I could go on?
I'm done. But see, I'm glad you brought that up, though, because that's another point. Like, your budget's not going to look like my budget. Mm-hmm. My budget's not going to look like the next person's budget. Why? Because we all prioritize different things. Mm-hmm. So if travel is important to you, then make sure in your budget you have a spot for travel. Now, if you get to the bottom and you like, oh, I'm in the negative, then you know that something else has to give, mm-hmm. For instance, I had a client and she loved cable. She was like, I got to keep my cable. And I was like,
my 5 shows.
Right. For me, I'm like, oh, I don't even watch TV. Like, girl, you could probably get rid of that. But she was like, no, this is important to me. I said, okay, well, if that's important to you, where else are you going to pull it from? So now you have to start looking at the give and takes, like what has to sacrifice in order to get what you want. And so then when I put it into perspective like that, she was like, okay, well, I guess I just won't be eating out this day. And I'm like, that's fine. But see, my point is, everybody is going to be different. And as long as you put in your budget what's important to you, then that's fine. Yeah. And as long as you can make it balance out, then that's fine. Like, you shouldn't feel bad about doing what you like to do. All you need to do is just make sure that you can balance everything out, and then you're good. So I look at budgets as permission, not as restriction.
Okay, someone else said that too. It's like personal finance is personal, because baby, what I'm not doing is spending money on alcohol. But that's just me. Okay? You spend money. And I'm not paying for cable. I'm not paying for Netflix. All them dang streaming services that add up to $100. I'm just playing.
Exactly. But, and see, everybody has their thing. So, like, for me, I hate spending money on everything except for technology. I love technology. Now, I will drop a lot of money looking at my Peloton over here. I love technology. And so that's my thing. But as long as I can put in my budget to make it so I can afford it, then that's fine.
I'm like, why technology gotta be so expensive? I love it too, but baby, I can't afford it. If it's $2,000, $1,000, I'd be like, oh, child, okay. Like, oh, let me get that a little later.
Yeah. But that's also another good point too. Like, you should have financial goals. Like, you should have goals, period. But especially financial goals, because if you don't know what you're trying to get to, then how are you going to get there? So if you have a goal to, let's say, go on one international trip a year or what have you, then, okay, start doing research. Where you going to go? All that stuff. So that way you can get a number. Then once you have that number, start plugging it into your budget. And then you can say, oh, like, I just had a couple the other night and they were like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be going to Switzerland. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's go ahead and see how it fits in. Lo and behold, they'll be able to have the money earlier than they thought they would. They thought that they wasn't even going to be able to go on the trip. But after we went ahead and put the budget together, it was like, they're going to be saved up like months earlier than what they thought. So, it's just about awareness and putting it all out there and seeing what you can do with it.
That's good. Being aware and knowing your numbers is really, really good. So that would be actually some great suggestions, because we know it's tax season. Some people have already got their taxes back. Some people are getting it back right now. So
some people didn't file their taxes yet, like myself.
Yeah. Girl, I just did it yesterday, so I can't even talk. I'm like, I'm barely making it. They extended it. I said, but let me get it now, because don't tell me you extend the deadline, because I'll be trying to go later on.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't even hear you say that.
So, yeah, it's still a date. So I was going to say, like, on this financial freedom journey, like with the taxes, with the money that people get and stuff like that, so they're aware. So first you got to be aware, and you got to know your numbers. What would you say would be the next thing for them to do? The numbers and then the budget, but like, the next part, I guess, in that to do. Like, would you suggest they invest? Would you suggest like people save up? Like, what do you think? Or just like pay debt off altogether? What, I guess, like suggestions would you give in that area?
It all depends, right? So it kind of depends on what their personal goals are and what they're trying to accomplish. So let me give you an example. When I was on my whole debt-free by 30 thing, like, I didn't care about nothing but paying off debt. And when I say any means necessary, homegirl was working 2 jobs, going to school full time, and driving Uber and Lyft on the weekends. Like, I was going hard. And when I did that, I was able to pay off, $50,000 in a little over a year. But it's like, it depends on what's important to you. So if being debt free or not having credit card debt is important, then go ahead and start putting that extra money towards that. If saving, having an emergency fund is important to you because that makes you feel safe, that makes you feel secure, then start putting money towards that. If neither one of those is important to you and you just like, YOLO, I want to live my best life, then go ahead and start putting your money towards whatever it is you want to put it towards. So that's kind of like, I kind of don't like when people try to give just blanket statements. Like, it just depends on what's important to the person. That's true. If debt payoff is important to you, which I suggest it be important to you, only because if you think about it, okay, if you think about all the debt payments that you make every month, whatever it is, whether it's credit cards, student loans, those were extended, by the way, August.
Okay, period. August 31st. Don't tell me that because I need to be putting in my time now.
Right. But if you have debt, whatever it is, credit cards, student loans, your car payment, house payment, whatever it is, if you add up all of that together, how much money could you have every month just in disposable income if you didn't have those debt payments? Like, if you think about it like that, you're like, dang, I'm just throwing money away. Like, that's how I felt about debt, like when I started on that journey, because I was like, I could have an extra how much every month if I just didn't owe people.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, this is my priority now. So if you think about it like that, and this kind of goes back to something that I didn't hit on, which I should have hit on first, but it's all about your mindset. It's all about the psychological part of money, because money is very psychological. It's very emotional. And you'll learn that, like, when you go to the store, be more aware of how you feel. Be more aware when you like in the aisles, picking up stuff, putting stuff in your cart. How are you feeling? Is it making you happy? Is it making you excited? Is it like a relief? Is it retail therapy? Is it making you sad? Like, just tap into all of those emotions, because then that'll make you become aware of how your mental is responding to money. And so once you start becoming aware of that, then you can start doing like little mind hacks like that will help you treat money differently. And so let me give you an example. When I started budgeting, I started with budgeting as a restriction, right? Because that's what we always think, when we go on a diet, it's a restriction. But we also know that if we think about it like that, we're not going to stick to it, right? Because we're like, dang, I'm depriving myself because I'm trying to get this goal. Now, how I look at budgeting is it gives me permission. So a good example of that is I have a clothing line item, right? So I have it in my budget where I have clothing. It's very minimal because, like I said, I don't like to spend money. So it's like maybe like $30, $40, okay? There was one point in time where I needed some new shoes. I mean, my old shoes was like starting to come apart, doing a little talking number. And so I was like, okay, I need some new shoes. But in my head, I was like, well, dang, Tiffany, you get some new shoes, you're going to be thrown off from your debt-free journey, That was what was going on in my mind. Yes, that's how my mind was thinking. And so I said, you know what? No, go back and look at your budget, because every month you always put in clothing and you have a allotment for clothing. You just never use it. And so when I did that, I was like, oh, and I still have my debt payoff here, and I still have this, and I can still do this, blah, blah, blah. And so that's when it dawned on me that the budget actually gives me permission to do the things that I want to do. It's not restricting me. And so it gave me permission to get the shoes that I really needed without throwing any of my other goals off. Like, everything else is still going to be on track. It's not going to move the needle on nothing else. It's fine, And so it gave me permission that I can go ahead and get this and nothing else will be affected. And so that's kind of how I tell people you can like kind of tweak how you look at your budget. It's not a restrictive device. It's actually something that gives you freedom. And also another way that a budget gave me freedom was when I was quitting corporate. So I've been a full-time entrepreneur since 2019.
Congrats.
Yes, thank you. So when I was quitting, I had a budget and I had a number. I said, okay, I can make $50 a day and I can pay my bills at that time. It's not like that now, but at that time,
okay, I'm like
it was
$50
$50
a day, period.
So I said, right. I said $50 a day. I was like, I can drive Uber and Lyft for 2 to 3 hours to make $50 a day. Mm-hmm. And then I can have the rest of my day to do whatever it is I wanted to do. And so when I had that number in my mind, I'm like, why am I sitting here at a 9 to 5 for X amount of hours a day? Yeah. And I was salary at the time. And they try to work you to death. So I'm working sometimes 10, 12 hours a day when I could really just work 2 to 3 good hours and be off for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. So I said, once I started putting in perspective because of my budget, I said, you know what? I don't need to do this. I can literally go drive around for 2 to 3 hours, make enough to survive, and then spend the rest of my day working on something that I love to do, which is Money Talk with Tiff. So that's another way that that was another way that the budget gave me freedom. So I tell people, look, y'all, there is power in knowing your numbers. So much power in knowing your numbers. And it's just something that, you just need to do, honestly. It's something that you need to do. It feels so good and so freeing. And it builds your confidence, too.
Mm-hmm. I love that because, when you said you paid $50,000 off in a year, I said, woo, child, oh my gosh. That sounds like a lot. I could not do that. But baby, because you lost me on the 2 jobs in the school. Whoo, child. And I know you got children. I said, whoo. I know I maybe need to be going a little bit harder over here, but whoo, I be tired. So yeah, but it's really, it's sad, but it's good to know your numbers and learn, but it's really sad because it's like, you got to figure out how you were talking about the budget. You got to figure out what you're going to give yourself permission to do, what you're going to sacrifice and stuff like that. Of course, I feel like we shouldn't have to sacrifice and all that stuff, but in reality, that's life. So, you got to choose your battles and what you can do. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I thank you so much for, shedding light on finances and your experience and, just telling people how you were able to create your plan for yourself in order to become debt free. Although you didn't do it by 31, you're going to do it by 35. I got faith in you, girl. Because I ain't going to do it by 30. So I don't even know. I ain't even looking at the debt. Because really I only have student loan debt. So I'm really, Biden need to go ahead and cancel that for you, girl.
They say when 2 or more are gathered in his name.
Okay, great.
We touch and agree.
Okay, we is touching and agree. I need y'all to touch and agree too if you listen to this podcast. Period. But yes, thank you so much. Tell people where they can listen to you, where they can listen to your podcast, where they can follow your blog and your journey on, investing and still learning about money and stuff like that. If they're in their debt-free, journey, if that's what they're on, or if they just want to learn more about side hustles and different things like that.
Yeah, so you can find me on moneytalkwitht.com. The brand is Money Talk with Tiff, so that's what my podcast is under as well. I'm on all social media at Money Talk with T, and when I say all, I mean literally everything. I'm addicted to social media, so you can find me everywhere, and you can even just Google Money Talk with Tiff. I will pop up, yes. But that's where you.
Oh no, I said yes, like I'm saying yes.
So yeah, you can find me anywhere pretty much. Mm-hmm. So just please tap into this knowledge. We all need it. And then once you learn something, go ahead and share it with somebody else. So that way they can learn something too. Because that's the only way we're going to get ahead is if we educate each other.
Yes. So share this episode is what she's saying with that's somebody
exactly
else.
What I was saying.
Okay. Share this episode. You know what I'm saying? And go check her out. We got to use you admitted to saying I am addicted to social media. That's funny. But yes, and so if you have not, I would love for you to leave a review, rate Millennial Thoughts Pod. You can find us on Instagram at Millennial Thoughts Pod, on Facebook, Millennial Thoughts. You can tap in if you are looking to be a guest, if you are looking to share us with somebody, you think somebody else would be great, definitely hit us up on Instagram, Facebook. My email is millennialthoughtspod@gmail.com. If you wanted to email us there, we would love to have you all. And thank you so much for being a part of the Financial Literacy Month so we can educate millennials on money and how they can do better with their money. Hey millennials, I am back with a special announcement. Millennial Thoughts Academy is launching in March. This is where we will help millennials learn everything they weren't taught in school, side hustle edition. So if you've always been interested in starting a side hustle, but you don't know where to go, you don't know how to do it, you don't know how to brand or market or promote yourself, make sure you enroll into the academy. That is by following us on Instagram at Millennial Thoughts Pod, and you can email me or you can DM me and say that you are interested or click the link in our bio. We are so excited to be accepting people for our academy next month. Spots will fill fast. So it is a 6-week program and it is 1-hour meetings every week. And at the end of it, you will have your side hustle, you will have your social media, and hopefully you will have your first sale. So if that sounds like something that you are interested in, please, please, please contact me. Get with me on Instagram, Twitter, or even Facebook. I have a group. Facebook is called Millennial Thoughts, page and everything. And you all are the first people to hear this because you all are listeners. So I greatly appreciate it. Please reach out to me. I want to help you all start side hustle so you can either get that new stream of income, pay back your debt, or even use the money to travel. It's your girl Alicia, and she's out.